Hey, if you don't know who I am, I'm Sean. I'm a Manchester-based DP and photographer working out of this lovely little studio. It's all blurry. I mainly do product photography. I always sell myself as someone who does the package of explaining interesting concept products to people. So videos talking about those products or photos of those products, things like that. This video is part of the Job Shadow vlog series. This is April's work. The reason this is April's work is because I'm a little bit behind. If you've been following along on Instagram or watched the March vlog, it's September now, wow, you'll know that I had a pretty bad break, broke my arm, smashed it to pieces. That meant that I wasn't doing so much shooting, I was doing lots of editing to compensate for that. Learned what sticky keys was for. As a result, I couldn't bring myself to edit through all the footage that I'd been taking March, April and May up until I did the arm thing. So it's September now and this is April's. Still think it's kind of interesting, just taking you along with what I kind of do day to day over the course of a month. This month was interesting. There's a holiday, a little bit of colour for you right there. I'm not really including much of that, only for the fact that I was testing the video on the A7 Mark II, which is a very old camera now. That's enough for that. This is a video featuring some gear. I think that's kind of interesting. The stuff that I'm buying, the stuff that I'm selling, the reasons for that, a little bit of that. So let's kick off with that. I picked up the back for the FF7, which lets you use V-mounts on it. It also outputs RAW over SDI. So you can use it with a Shogun Assassin or whatever it's called, and it means you can get ProRes RAW out of the FS7. It actually looks really great. I use ProRes RAW a lot on the FS5, and the FS7 is also really good. The beauty of the FS7 is you don't really need to do that because you've got the great 4K codec already, but I just wanted to give it a try out. So on my way to the studio, I just had the camera with me and I filmed some flowers and buildings and stuff like that. So this was one of the days on the Paper Republic product refresh that was alone in the studio, and you can see there's 600D and 200D. I've also got like a light stand in there with some fishing wire holding up some of the products. 600D's got like an octabox, but it's also got just a piece of fabric clipped to the front of it. The 200D's got the barn doors just onto the background to give that a sort of gradient, and you can see some of the tools of the trade here. I mentioned it in the last video, but for this shoot I bought an A7 II, and here I was just checking like just to see what the video quality was like, and I thought it was interesting. This was just, first one was standard profile, this one is S-Log 2. It graded really weirdly, like it was really dark. I'd also picked up a couple of Canon 5D Mark IIs because I was going to use those to have a matching pair of cameras, because I thought, well, it'd be better to have two identical cameras, and they're an old camera, but they're a pretty good camera. This was me just testing out the video for that. The colours were hard to grade, so I just put this bit in black and white. The problem with them was, of the three that I bought, all three are dead. I did find that when I was in certain lighting conditions, the colours looked great, and then out on the streets actually it looked really quite good. When I lit myself, I was just seeing like, oh, could I just use these as like an extra camera that's like constantly set up? And yeah, turns out I probably could have, because I think this looks great. Like I would happily use a 5D Mark II for like some videos, and again, like outdoors it looked great. Even I was so surprised about the video and how like nice it looked. I think one of the things, this is just some of the photos from one of the 5Ds that's now dead. Bought this cheap version of this a while ago. It's not good. and it doesn't have all the functionality of the expensive one, but it was £9 instead of £110. I'm just seeing if it actually works. I've never wanted to take it out on a job because of that. You know, because this is kind of an expensive setup, but I'm just trying it now, and as long as the camera's not too heavy, it does sort of work. The reason for something like this is when I use a camera on this, usually it ends up with the centre of gravity way off, either forwards or backwards. This helps maintain the centre of gravity a little bit. This was a really interesting shoot because there was so many things to photograph that we needed to dial in a look that felt consistent over like nearly 1,000 images, but also was interesting and remained interesting across those images. It had to be coherent, but it also had to be eye-catching, because this is the storefront. These are the storefront images. Props were really key. We had a limited color palette, and we wanted to keep props sort of to a minimum. And the sort of theme that we went with for a lot of them was natural materials, but with unnaturally perfect sort of edges. So I got this bit of oak, and I cut it down. I left some of the sort of live edge shapes, but also, you know, each of them have got maybe 4 or 5 sides that are, you know, very geometric. And I think that lends like I don't know, there's something beautiful about adding a geometric shape with a natural shape, you know, a natural material like this. Especially when you're working with leather, which is, you know, natural material, it's amorphous. You know, turning that into these products is turning something that is amorphous into very precise shapes in a way. So that's what I liked about this shoot. You can see I've got this backdrop just mounted to the ceiling. This is a little bit of a bodge. It's still up at the moment, but I'm going to put the rolling stand, not the rolling stand, the wall mounted rollers. I'm going to put them on that back wall so that I've always got access to the big backdrops as well. Because at the moment I've only got rolling wall mounts for the 1.35 meter paper backdrops. You can see there the 200D with the barn doors. Barn doors, honestly, do not sleep on barn doors because they are a very, very useful light modifier. The reason I included this shot is you can see my trolley there whilst I'm having lunch. My trolley there has got my laptop on. That laptop is also connected to a 32-inch like BenQ, really fancy, like very color accurate monitor that's calibrated, so I can see the image on both. Basically, I've added in front of the 600D with the Octobox type thing, I've added a bit of diffusion as well, just to soften that light up a little bit more. This is two of the very, very useful tools that I have. That little box thing there is a self-leveling laser that's great for getting stuff level, but it's also, you can lock it down and you can point that anywhere, and you can use that as your line to, you know, if you want to get a couple of objects in a row and it needs to be lined up, that laser level is really, really handy because you can turn it on and off from a distance. Basically, you can point it down, have the line on the paper. You don't have to I used to make pencil marks or like bring in a ruler, put the ruler up to, you know, the two things that I needed to be in line with each other, and you risk sort of touching them, knocking them, things like that. Whereas the laser obviously doesn't interfere with the scene, and as soon as you turn it off, it's gone. The other thing I've got there is the helping hands. This is just a cheap one off Amazon. Basically, it's for soldering stuff. It's just got a little clip on the end. I took the clip off on this one, but you can just use it for precision putting things into a scene. I use it a lot for little foam reflectors, just to get a little bit of light where you need it, or just propping stuff up, holding stuff up. Moving on to the other setup. This is why I've got the two setups. I had the big backdrop, and these are the smaller ones, so these are like half the width, and it just means that I can cycle between the two. I spoke about this a lot in the last video, but it's handy having two setups. Then back in the studio, Katie came in to help me again for the rest of this. Just another look at the room. You can see there the monitor, the trolley. That's the camera that's on that tripod is the A7 II, and helping hands again, super useful. Those props, you can see getting a lot of use out of those. Helping hands. The other one I've got is just got a little bit of aluminium armature sort of clamped into it, which is really useful for finagling things. There you can see it with the reflector on it. Just a little bit of foam with some aluminium tape on it. It's like aluminium foil, but with sticky back, comes on a roll like tape. And then this other one is just being used to prop that book up. Also, another thing, you saw them there, weights. Weights are super handy, all different sizes of weights, just for pinning stuff down, making sure stuff doesn't roll away. Hello, Katie, thank you for helping. Yeah, pinning stuff down with weights or with these little helping hands. Really, really handy. Yeah, there's the reflective tape on it. Super cheap, but so useful. So the other thing, the other shoot was this one with Georgie Glass. This was just a little test shoot, and basically what it was, she's not used Capture One. She's a Lightroom user. There's no shame in that. Feel free to admit it to people. So she just wanted to see what Capture One was all about. So I invited her over to the studio, and we said, well, we'll just throw together a tiny little test shoot. And she brought a camera along, and we were playing about with Capture One. So this was like honestly thrown together in over the course of like 5 or 6 text messages a couple of days before. Come over, we'll set this backdrop up, and we'll do a little test shoot. Just bought a couple of cans on the way to the studio. Yeah, so I just bought a couple of cans of Pimm's because that was what was on offer. Got to work setting stuff up. Super simple. Got a blue backdrop, simple blue backdrop. Got the 600D and the 200D. You'll notice that they come up quite a lot. That blue backdrop's just draped down, and then I've got this piece of MDF which I tiled for another shoot. And the other thing that Georgie wanted to have a look at was using like a bare bulb type lighting setup. So no modifier on the 600D, that is just firing straight at it. I brought some glasses from home and a couple of like fake ice cubes. Don't love those fake ice cubes, but I've not got a freezer at the studio. What are you going to do? 200D is just casting a little bit of light on the backdrop, just giving it a bit of a gradient. You can see there's Georgie's R5. In fact, if anyone's used an R5 with Capture One, the way I set my Sony up is I have the camera and the camera screen's on and the live view's on the big monitor, and I can use the camera. I can use every feature of the camera. It just works like a camera, but you can also see it on the screen, and you can fire it. You can use touch autofocus. With the R5, as soon as you plug it into Capture One and go to live view, that camera can only be controlled by the computer. If anyone knows what to do or how that works, if there's a way to have it so that the camera still works, because sometimes you want to walk around with the camera, but you want someone else to be able to see what's happening on screen. I don't know. It's not my camera. I've not had access to it, so to actually use it and play about with it and see if there's a workaround or a way, a setting that you can change. If there is, let me know. I'd be very grateful. I'm sure Georgie would too, because her experience of Capture One because of this, not great, because she couldn't use it the way she wanted to. So we're doing some pouring shots. I'm firing the shutter from the computer, and then we're going over to the big monitor to review stuff. I do still use my 2015 MacBook Pro a lot when I'm shooting, because the laptop you can move around. If it's if you need to hold it in your hands and stuff like that, it's handy, literally. Even though I've got the M1 Studio there, I still use the laptop more when I'm shooting. That's just a quirk of me. So I'm using the A7S III. I'm just doing a little bit of video as well. I thought might as well get some pouring shots and some shots with the Edelchrome slider and the rotating shots with the head one. And I just put it together into a little video sort of montage thing. I think it looks quite nice. Another little bit of equipment that is really useful and kind of underrated but overpriced is an Apple box. This is one that I just made myself. They're like, if you've got the tools, they're incredibly easy to make and they don't cost an awful lot of money. But if you want to buy them, I think they're probably a bit cheaper now. Like the more people use stuff like that. Problem is in England, in the UK, it tends to be harder to find things like that. Obviously in America, you've got more access to it because there's more need for it. There's more video being produced. There's more sets that need Apple boxes. While the 360 camera really makes me look weird, doesn't it? This shoot, honestly, like for what it was a super quick shoot. It wasn't anything serious. But actually, I think by putting out the results from it and putting out some of the behind the scenes, we did actually got some work off it, which is pretty cool. It only took us we were there for 2-3 hours maybe, something like that. Classic little trick is a bit of glycerin mixed with some water just to get those longer lasting condensation-y on the can. These are just some photos that Georgie took behind the scenes. Yeah, you just sort of put it in a little atomizer and spray it on wherever you need it. The more glycerin you put in, the more it kind of clumps together. The more water, the sort of smaller the droplets you get. And that's me with the little reflector on the helping hand as well. I also have 2 working arms there. So this is the end result. I have not put the music with it because I think we use an Instagram music. I think it looks great. It's just slow-mo, drippy, poury, nothing groundbreaking, but quite beautiful. Yeah, I think it looks nice. It's the kind of thing that you would actually see as an advert, whereas I find that some of the stuff you see with Daniel Schiffer do, and so I saw, what was his name, Peter Lindgren, just saw him do a video of a steakhouse, and I was like, I don't ever see that in higher end advertising. I don't necessarily mean advertising for high end stuff. I mean advertising where there's money being spent on it. Next shoot was another one that I was working on with Georgie, so I'm just doing video. And this was for individual restaurants. That is the name of the company, not just working with individual restaurants. So this was just a couple of hours to film a choir sort of event that they had on. For me, my Sunday rate, no matter how long I'm there for, is a full day rate. Often when you tell a client that, they will say, oh, okay, we'll get back to you and we'll maybe try and find some other stuff for you to do on that day. They want to get their money's worth. I'm not willing to get up early on a Sunday morning and go and do a shoot that's 2 hours long for just 2 hours pay. And I don't know if that makes me sound like a dick, but that's just the way it is. If you're getting me up on a Sunday, I'd rather work the whole day and earn a proper crust for it, not just work a couple of hours. And because the problem with a 2 hour shoot is it's never just 2 hours. It takes over the parts of the day that it isn't actually supposed to take up. They had a load of influencers at this choir thing, so they were like, right, we'll get all the influencers together. None of them knew each other. So what they did is they decided on these different scenes around different offers that they had. So they had a brunch offer, they had a cocktail offer, they had a sharer platter, things like that. And we just got these influencers and we set them up in these different scenes. We got them to chat with each other. It was really great because they were great actors, even though none of them were actors. They all really got into the roles. I think this shoot turned out really nicely. This is just on the A7 S3, pretty much all shot vertical because it's all for story content. So there's no point shooting it horizontal and then trying to crop a middle out of it. It just looks so much better shooting natively for what you're going to deliver. And there was just one light on them. This is like out on a relatively nice day. It's a little bit overcast at sometimes. There's just a Aperture 200D bare bulb, I think, just shining off from one side. So it would be camera right. And yeah, just some beauty shots of the food out there, and then some with everyone chatting, laughing, cheersing, getting people to cheers like 4 or 5 times. And some of this was just handheld, some of it was gimbal, and for the most part, in fact, I'd say 99% of this was on the 24 to 105. It was probably at 5.6. The thing about shallow depth of field, and why I wouldn't ever choose the 24 to 70 over the 24 to 105, is because I never shoot at 2.8 when I'm doing video, because it's always like f4 is too shallow depth of field for like this kind of event stuff, this kind of food stuff, for portraits, like for people. I just find if I do need the shallow depth of field, I throw on like the 35 1.4, because if I want the shallow depth of field, I really want the shallow depth of field. So this was the video of the choir. This is pretty much all on a gimbal. There's some of it on a slider, but this was just getting audience reactions. I think it worked out really nicely, just roving the room basically, and yeah, getting some close-up. That's why the 105 end of the 24 to 105 is so useful. You just crash into 105, get these like tight shots of reaction where you're across the room, and you're able to sort of pick people out. This next one was pretty is a pretty handy little project to come in. It's basically just the re-edits on some stuff that I'd done a couple of years ago. I had the footage, they wanted some different cuts of it, they wanted some that they could use for social media, so they just got me to recut it and do some new graphics for some vertical, little shorts. They also sent over some stuff that they'd shot, so they'd been to these events and they just got someone to with their phone just record some stuff. They'd also asked some people to record themselves, so with their phones, and just send it into them for me to then edit. Annoyingly, they didn't give them any advice, any prompting, so all of the footage they sent me was shot horizontally. They wanted it for stories, and so it's all vertical that it needs to be, so it doesn't look amazing. Look at him go! And come back and look who's waiting for me. So this is the first print I've done on this new machine. The first print I ever did was back in like 2002. The high school that I went to when I was in the first year of GCSE, they got this big grant from the government, and because of that, we got a 3D printer and a laser cutter. We used the 3D printer once. I was one of like the nerdy kids, and I was good, so I was allowed to use it. And I broke it straight away. Well, we broke it, a couple of us. And since then, I've always been just like infatuated with the idea of 3D printing. So much so that when I did my MA, one of the projects was I used 3D printing quite a lot. And some of the stuff there, some of the printers at the time, so I went to like a makerspace and I spent a whole day trying to get a good print of this thing that I was trying to do. It's a slide viewer, like a photographic slide viewer, and it just didn't work ever. Then I ended up using the technician at uni, and he printed on their like £50,000 machine. He printed some stuff off for me, and that was great. I've wanted one for ages, but I've not had a reason to get one. And recently, the idea to print props has been coming up more and more for like product videos and product photos and things like that. So I finally caved and got one, and I got the Ender S1 Pro something. S1 Pro, I think that's it. So this is the first print you get an SD card that has like a couple of files on there that you can choose to print from. I decided to print this little rabbit. It's going to be Katie's, and she's going to call it Tiny, I think. So. Okay, little set breakdown. This we made yesterday, pretty much. A little bit today. The skirting board is just tacked up against the wall. Floor we painted white to get this whitewashed wood look. This desktop we painted the top white and then just made sure to sand the edges so that it's a nice crisp clean edge. A little bit of blossom because Manchester's in bloom at the moment. This light is has some barn doors on it which flags it off, which makes it look a little bit more like a window. This light is then providing lift for the rest of it, so without it it looks like that. And this blossom is creating a shadow on the wall. Pretty simple setup, but effective. And for anyone wanting to know, this is a Amaran 200D. This is a daylight 200 watt-ish equivalent light, and this is the Aputure Lightstorm 600D, not the Pro version because I'm in a studio, don't really need it to be weatherproof. That's a lot of light. Just heading to the studio, the last day of work, half day, fingers crossed it's a half day, before 10 days, 9, 8, it's kind of 10 days in Spain, where I vowed to do no work at all, but that is a vow that I'm already not sticking to, because I'm going to take my computer with me. I just can't. The reason I'm taking it is not necessarily to do work, but it's the idea that if something comes up, I would like to be able to react to it and not have to wait 10 days and worry about it for 10 days. I guess maybe that's like a sign of a broken brain or something, but the idea that I could get all my work done out of the way, deliver stuff, tell people that I'm going to be away, and then have 10 days where I don't think about work at all, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't compute. I'd love it to, but I just can't. Like I'll be too anxious. So bringing the computer along means that if one of these jobs that I've delivered a few jobs, you know, the last couple of days, videos that might need amends on them, so they've gone out to people haven't responded yet, which is fair enough. Projects need to go live maybe early next week. They need time to put their copy with them, and then maybe amends, stuff that I've missed, but more likely stuff that I wouldn't have even known about. So like things like, oh, this cocktail's not made to spec, that's not how it should be dressed, actually they're the wrong plates for this dish, don't know how the chef missed that on the day, things like that. These are things that happen, they come up, and because no one's replied to me, I feel like they are going to reply to me even though I've told them I'm going to be away. I feel like I'm going to have emails that say, hey, we actually really need this by tomorrow, these amends, and you're not about. And even though I've told them I'm not going to be here, these things still come through, these things still happen. And it'd be more stressful because obviously I'll have my phone with me. I will see these emails as much as I'll try to ignore them. I will see them. And because of that, I know to not be stressed, I'm going to need to take my computer with me on holiday. Didn't want to do it. Hopefully I've got enough baggage allowance because I was like, right, I barely need anything, super minimal travel. So what I'm not saying is this is how it is for everyone who's freelance, but if you've got a bit of anxiety, basically, if you overthink things, if you worry, this is basically how freelancing could be for you, because we don't get paid holiday. We don't have people at our company that can just pick up the slack when we're away. I wish I was in some sort of partnership, but I'm not. I know my friend just started a company and he's
there's 2 of them, and I just feel like that wouldn't be easier, but there would be times when it would make things simpler. Last shoot of the month was for a company called Cocktail Co, and that was through Blossom. That's Ruby there, who works for Blossom. She was also the model for the day. So, little outdoor shoot. I think the photos came out really nice. They're quite easy to photograph those things. And then it was on to holiday, which I was really glad of at that point. After the holiday, I ran the Manchester Marathon, so I was just training for it the last couple of days we were on holiday. And I was aiming for sub 320. I got 326, I think, so a little slower than I wanted to, but overall pretty decent.